Can you imagine a war between gods? Well, your first thought would be, why would gods even go to war? Interestingly, not all gods are the same, and when we're talking about Norse mythology, this sentence makes all the more sense. Although you would never believe that a war between gods could happen, ironically, the first and the longest war was fought between Aesir and Vanir gods in Norse mythology. But what led to it, and who emerged victorious? Hi, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we'll uncover a long and brutal struggle between the Aesir and Vanir gods from the Norse mythology. But before we go into who began the war and why there was conflict in the first place, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button so you stay updated of our future uploads. Now, let's begin. So the Norse primarily believed in two god races, the Aesir, who lived in Asgard, and the Vanir, who lived in Vanaheim. And these two groups of gods had lived with each other peacefully for quite a long period of time, making a significant contribution to the happenings in the Norse mythology. However, their agreement didn't last long, as both these groups in fact went on a war against each other. Now, although the Aesir-Vanir War is not the most well-known event in Norse mythology, it surely is one of the most significant ones, because this war and its aftermath was to shape how the Norse people perceive their gods and possibly provide understanding into how they evolved. But before we get into the fight between these two tribes, it's also important to understand who the Aesir and Vanir gods were. If you're completely new to Norse mythology, just hear this. Aesir group was where Odin came from, while Vanir group was where Freya and Freyr came from. Now, let's decode this further. The Aesir were the primary group of gods worshipped by ancient Nordic pagans, while the Vanir were the secondary group. The members of this primary group were recognized for their warlike temperament and relationship with knowledge, and they most likely represented the violent aspects of nature. One of the 9 realms of the world tree, Asgard, is where they resided. The Aesir were a powerful god tribe that valued strength above everything else, and they were unbeatable until they met their supposed equals against the Vanir. It was believed that the Aesir gods were untouchable, but lacked strategy, coordination, and planning. Majority of them also despised the practice of magic, preferring to rely primarily on their talents in brutal war. And as far as the world is aware of, all of them can use their power to improve their physical abilities and new weapons. They even lived in a well-ordered society, with Odin as king and Forseti as the administrator of law and justice. Their civilization is claimed to have been regulated by social hierarchy. This was reflected in how the gods were worshipped. Odin was the Norse deity of warfare, literature, and royalty. Thor was a protecting god, but his hammer was also used to mark key social events such as marriages and deaths. Frigg, Odin's wife, is the goddess of household and motherhood. Collectively, the Aesir gods hated and despised everything that was unpredictable and uncontrollable. The Vanir, on the other hand, were linked to the natural world. They are a group of gods linked with fertility, intelligence, and prediction. In fact, most of them represented the calm qualities of nature, as opposed to those of Aesir, who represented the violent aspects of nature. This group originated from one of the 9 realms of the world tree, Vanaheim. For their key members, Freya was the goddess of love, Freyr was the spring goddess, and Njord was the wind and water god. They were more open to love and practiced magic, and Vanir brothers and sisters frequently married one another, like the twins Freyr and Freya, who wedded one another and were the children of Njord and his sister. So now we know a basic brief of who were the members of these two groups and what they represented. You might be wondering, how would such divine groups turn on each other for a full-blown war? Well, here's why. Before the birth of mankind, both the groups lived somewhat together around the areas of Asgard. However, as days passed, conflict started rising between the two. One of the main causes for this was Vanir's group's refusal to follow the orders of Aesir gods. Then one day, the war began. It was precisely when the Vanir goddess 𝐥𝐤𝐤 arrived in Asgard, the home of the Aesir. The Aesir were fascinated by her magical abilities and eagerly sought her help. Odin, on the other hand, Odin did not greet the witch 𝐥𝐤𝐤 warmly when she came to visit him. In his hall, he and many other Aesir gods listened with disgust as she spoke only of her love thirst for gold. They believed that the world would be a better place without her, so they angrily captured and tormented her, riddling her body with spears. Then they threw 𝐥𝐤𝐤 into the fire in the middle of the hall. Even though she was completely burnt to death, she emerged from the fire whole and reborn. 𝐥𝐤𝐤's body was burned 3 times by Aesir, and each time she returned. When the Vanir heard how the Aesir had welcomed 𝐥𝐤𝐤, they were as furious as the Aesir had been by 𝐥𝐤𝐤's gold lust, so they vowed revenge and began to plan for war. Nothing missed Odin's notice as he sat in the high seat, and the Aesir began to sharpen their spears and polished their shields. Soon after, the gods clashed. At the beginning of the war, Odin, the chief of the Aesir, flung his spear into the troops of the Vanir. The Aesir fought with weapons and pure strength, whereas the Vanir used more subtle ways of witchcraft. The fight lasted a long period, with both sides taking turns getting the upper hand. Initially, the Vanir gained power. They used magic to reduce Asgard's mighty gates and shields to pieces, but the Aesir fought back and drove ahead, causing no less harm in Vanaheim. The conflict continued on for a long time, and the longer it continued, the clearer it seemed that neither side was likely to win. The gods on both sides ultimately got tired of the battle, and instead of more of such disruption, negotiation and a peace seemed to be a wise decision. With this, the Norse gods' golden era ended with the First War. Because neither side could beat the other, they decided to establish a union. The Aesir and Vanir leaders gathered to discuss terms. They argued about the causes of the war and whether the Aesir were solely to blame or whether both sides were to be blamed for the war. At the end of the discussion, Aesir and Vanir swore by spitting into the same vessel, agreed to coexist peacefully, and agreed to trade leaders as proof of their intentions. These gods not only function as symbols of the new union, but also as hostages to secure peace. So this tells us that the war ended with a truce and the exchanges of hostages. But who all were exchanged as per the terms? Honir was handed to the Vanir, while Njord, their richest god, was given to the Aesir. Kvasir stayed in Asgard, while Mimir, Asgard's smartest deity, relocated to Vanaheim. Freyr and Freya, Njord's children, accompanied him. This is when Njord, Freyr, and Freya moved to Asgard to live among the Aesir. Their marriages were all annulled, and they were all married to other people. This demonstrates that the practice of incest was one of the key things to which the Aesir opposed, since they believed the Aesir were superior gods. The three quickly settled in Asgard, introduced satyr magic, and gained fame among the Aesir. Now, although the Vanir had not lost the conflict, the Aesir still remained slightly stronger as Odin rose to become the supreme ruler of all the gods. But while Aesir gods such as Odin and Thor continued to be honored, people also paid tribute to the Vanir gods of prosperity and fertility. So it was a rather win-win for both the sides. And with this, we come to an end for this video. What do you think about this war, and who do you think was responsible for starting a war? Let us know down in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated to our future uploads. You can also check out our channel for more such mythical content. We'll see you again with more mythological stories the next time. Until then, stay mythical.